Power is not given to the strongest. It is taken by the smartest. Every empire that ever ruled this world was built the same way, by people whose minds cut sharper than any sword. Strategy has always beaten strength. Anticipation has always beaten force. And the ones who shaped history were not the biggest or the bravest. They were the thinkers who saw angles others were blind to. Today, you step into their arena. This brain hack you're about to learn does not just make you smarter. It multiplies your intelligence under pressure, in conflict, in chaos. It trains your mind to operate where everyone else breaks. While others crumble the moment stakes rise, you sharpen. While others wait to react, you calculate 3 moves ahead. While they rely on instinct, you rely on engineered clarity. This is the craft that creates masterminds, the skill that turns ordinary people into strategists, operators, and quiet rulers of every room they walk into. Not because they were born gifted, but because they conditioned their brain the way warriors condition their body. By the end of this video, you won't just think faster, you'll think differently. You'll think in a way most people can't even follow. This is where intelligence stops being a trait and becomes a weapon. And if you use it without restraint, it won't just make you powerful, it will make you dangerous. Cognitive edge conditioning, the mind of the apex thinker. Most people think intelligence is a score they got in school and then carried for life, like a label burned into their forehead. They walk into a room, into an argument, into a negotiation, and whatever brain they brought that day is all they get. If they choke under pressure, they call it anxiety. If they overreact, they call it being emotional. If they get played, they call it bad luck. Meanwhile, a small minority of people walk into the same rooms and move differently. They stay lucid when others panic. They see angles others miss. They do not react, they choose. It looks like they are simply smarter, almost unfairly so. The truth is more dangerous than that. Their intelligence is not just higher, it is trained. It is conditioned like a weapon. That is what cognitive edge conditioning is about. It is the shift from treating intelligence as a passive trait to treating it as something you shape under tension on purpose. Neuroscience has already killed the myth of a fixed adult brain, but society still clings to it because it makes people easier to control. Michael Merzenich and other plasticity researchers showed that the adult brain rewires based on what it repeatedly does. When Dragansky had people learn juggling, their brains changed physically. When they stopped, those changes faded. The brain is not a statue, it is wet clay that keeps responding to what you demand from it. Carol Dweck's work on growth mindset exposed how deadly the "I am just not smart" story really is. People who believe their abilities can grow actually push into hard challenges, and their performance rises over time. People who think intelligence is fixed avoid situations that might expose them as not smart enough, and their performance becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So intelligence, in the real world, is not just about how many patterns your brain can hold. It is about how you respond when the situation becomes complex, fast, and high pressure. This is where the split between normal thinkers and apex thinkers becomes obvious. Normal thinkers live in System 1. Kahneman described System 1 as fast, automatic, emotional, and habit-driven. It is useful for routine. It keeps you from thinking deeply about every tiny decision. But under stress, most people drown in System 1. They react based on fear, ego, bias, or impulse. Apex thinkers do something different in the same conditions. When the room heats up, they can pull themselves into System 2. System 2 is slower, more deliberate, more analytical. It feels like stepping back from the fire while everyone else leans in with bare hands. An apex thinker still feels stress, but they route that stress into focus instead of chaos. They pause half a second longer before speaking. They notice their own emotional spike and do not let it steer the decision. That half second becomes a massive edge because it is where prediction, control, and strategy live. You can see cognitive edge conditioning clearly in places where mistakes are expensive. Militaries do not send soldiers into battle and hope they naturally think well under gunfire. They run simulations, drills, war games. They overload the brain with controlled stress until calm decision-making under threat becomes normal. High-level finance is the same. Traders who move billions do not just memorize charts, they train their reactions to volatility so they do not lose their head when markets spin. Intelligence agencies run red team exercises, role plays, and scenario simulations to harden cognition. In these worlds, thinking is treated the way athletes treat muscles. It is trained, pressured, and sharpened deliberately. Yet the average person treats thinking as something that just happens while scrolling, drifting through conversations, and reacting to life. Cognitive edge conditioning starts with a brutal acceptance. Your brain is being conditioned either way. If you do not control that process, something else will. Algorithms condition your attention to chase novelty and outrage. Social media trains your reward system to respond to instant validation instead of long-term outcomes. Work environments train you to rush, multitask, and live inside distraction. Stronger minds in your world, whether bosses, partners, or rivals, learn your patterns and push your buttons. If you run on default, your intelligence becomes a tool that serves other people's agendas. Every reaction they can predict in you is a handle they can pull. Conditioning your own mind is not some nice self-help project. It is self-defense. The core of cognitive edge conditioning is simple. Intelligence is not just how much you know, it is how effectively you can think under pressure, in motion, in conflict. A calm puzzle on a desk does not test your real intelligence. The real test is whether you can think 3 moves ahead while your reputation, money, or relationships are on the line. That is where most people collapse. Their working memory gets hijacked by stress. Their attention narrows to the wrong detail. Their choices get driven by fear of loss or hunger for quick relief. Merzenich research, Jonada's work on working memory, and similar studies show that repeated focused challenge changes the brain. The catch is that your daily life already presents those challenges. You just have never treated them as training ground. Imagine 2 people in the same argument. Both are equally smart on paper. The first person feels attacked, raises their voice, says things they regret, and commits to a bad position just to protect their ego. Later they realize they overreacted, but the damage is done. The second person feels the same punch of emotion, but they have trained for this. Instead of firing back, they slow their breathing, ask a question, and watch the other person's emotional range. They do not show their full thoughts. They give themselves space to think, to simulate, to observe. Outwardly, the difference looks like being calm or being good under pressure. Internally, this is conditioned cognition. The second person has built a habit of pulling their brain into system 2 when it matters most. Power structures quietly depend on this difference. Most institutions do not need millions of apex thinkers. They need a small number of strategic thinkers and a large number of predictable performers. Schools reward memorization and obedience more than situational intelligence. Corporations prefer employees who follow processes over people who question systems. Governments are more stable when citizens are reactive and distracted rather than strategically aware. Teaching deep cognitive control, stress training, and strategic thinking to the masses would create people who are harder to sell to, harder to scare, harder to herd. That is not ideal for those who profit from mass predictability. So the knowledge is sliced and only partially distributed. Soldiers get stress inoculation, executives get decision coaching, interrogators get advanced influence tactics, while the public gets told to follow your passion and stay positive. Cognitive edge conditioning takes the tools already used in those elite circles and applies them to your own life. It means you start to treat your mind like a high-performance system instead of background noise. You deliberately step into controlled challenges that force your prefrontal cortex to work while your body is under tension. You train prediction by watching people's patterns instead of just listening to their words. You build habits that keep your emotions from leaking out as obvious tells. You delay your most important decisions long enough for your brain to reorganize the information in your favor. Over time, your mind stops being something the world pushes around and becomes something that shapes how the world responds to you. The gap between normal and apex thinking is not about being born gifted. It is about who takes responsibility for their own mental programming. An untrained mind is like an open system that accepts any input, Media, gossip, fear, urgency, emotional bait. A conditioned mind filters, watches, and selects. It asks different questions. Instead of "how do I feel right now?" it asks what is actually happening and what happens next if I do nothing. Instead of "how do I win this moment?" it asks what decision here gives me advantage over the next days or weeks. That level of thinking does not appear by accident. It is built. The stakes are simple. If you do not deliberately sharpen your cognitive edge, you become the environment. You react to whatever is thrown at you. You get dragged into other people's timelines and emotional storms. Your intelligence gets used to justify bad decisions instead of preventing them. But if you treat intelligence as programmable, if you condition it the way a fighter conditions reflexes, you become the person in the room who does not rush, does not get baited, and does not show their full hand. People might not understand why they feel slightly off balance around you. They just sense that you think in a way they cannot predict or control. That is the mind of the apex thinker, and it is built, not granted. Controlled cognitive tension, turning stress into intelligence. Most people think stress is the enemy of intelligence. They wait for perfect calm to make good decisions, then wonder why they fall apart when life never gives it to them. The truth is harsher. Your brain becomes what it repeatedly faces. If you only think clearly in comfort, you are useless when it counts. The key is not to avoid stress, but to control it. This is where the Yerkes-Dodson law matters. It shows that performance is not best when you are fully relaxed or completely overwhelmed. There is a middle zone, a precise band where arousal is high enough to focus you, but not so high that you lose control. That band is where your true intelligence appears. Apex thinkers live there on purpose. They learn to dial stress up and down like a volume knob, using it to sharpen their mind instead of letting it blow their circuits. The prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain right behind your forehead, is the control center for planning, impulse control, and decision-making. Under mild to moderate stress, it activates strongly, helping you weigh options and regulate reactions. Under extreme, uncontrolled stress, it can shut down, leaving older emotional systems in charge. That is why in panic, you say things you regret, make reckless choices, or mentally freeze. Research on stress inoculation in soldiers, firefighters, and emergency doctors shows that repeated exposure to controlled, intense situations strengthens prefrontal function. They still feel pressure, but their brain stops interpreting it as a crisis. It becomes data, not danger. For them, sirens and blood are cues to think more clearly, not less. Chronic, uncontrolled stress is different. Long-term burnout, constant worry, sleep deprivation, and never-ending overload damage cognition. Studies have shown shrinking gray matter in key regions under prolonged stress, along with worse working memory, slower decision-making, and higher emotional reactivity. This is where most people live, under constant low-level threat with no recovery. They scroll until late at night, wake up tired, drown in tasks, and never fully switch off. Their brain stays in a background state of tension that is never high enough to train them, but high enough to erode them. On the other hand, short, intense cognitive sprints, spaced with real recovery, have been shown to improve working memory and executive functions. Johnnides and others demonstrated that challenging the brain with tasks that stretch working memory, then resting, leads to measurable gains. The pattern is simple: strain, then recover, not strain forever. This is not just about lab tasks. It shows up in dark, real-world settings. Interrogators use stress to destabilize thinking. Sleep deprivation, time pressure, social pressure, and confusion are used to push the brain out of the optimal band into collapse, making people more suggestible and less able to track contradictions. High-stakes negotiators do similar things, but more subtly. They use deadlines, sudden offers, and silent pauses to spike anxiety. The goal is to force the other side into a rushed decision. Elite gamers and high-level competitors understand this from the other angle. They seek out pressure matches, ranked games, and tournaments not just to win, but to train their brain to stay strategic when adrenaline surges. They throw themselves into environments where others would choke, so that later, In real stakes situations, their mind feels like it has been there before. You can either be the person who gets destabilized by tension or the person who feeds on it. To flip the script, you need controlled stress, not random chaos. This means deliberately stepping into situations that stretch you mentally and emotionally, while keeping enough control to avoid total collapse. It means debating with people who are smarter or harsher than you, instead of hiding in easy conversations. It means taking on responsibilities that force you to plan, prioritize, and make real decisions, where mistakes have consequences, not just opinions. It means placing yourself in social, professional, and mental discomfort regularly, with the goal of staying calm and analytical instead of escaping. A practical cognitive tension protocol looks like this in simple terms. Several times a week, you step into a task or situation that genuinely raises your heart rate. It could be a difficult conversation, a time-limited problem, a high-stakes presentation, or defending an idea in front of people who disagree. While inside that stress, you focus on three things: your breathing, your inner dialogue, and your decision pace. You slow your breathing slightly, because your body state is a direct lever on your brain state. You cut off inner sentences that sound like "I am failing" and replace them with "what exactly is happening right now." You do not rush to fill silence or make the first move. You force yourself to think in small, clear steps, even while your body wants to react. You also control the duration. A sprint is intense but limited. You do not stay in maximum tension all day. You push hard for a defined period, then exit and recover. That recovery is not mindless scrolling or numbing. It is sleep, quiet, or simple low-demand tasks that let your brain reset. Sleep research shows that during rest, particularly in deep sleep, the brain consolidates what it learned. Controlled stress without recovery just wears you down. Controlled stress with recovery builds capacity. Over time, what used to feel overwhelming starts to feel normal. Your prefrontal cortex adapts. Your working memory holds more under load. Your emotional reactions still show up, but they do not hijack your decisions as quickly. The danger zone in this protocol is sliding from training into self-destruction. Many ambitious people confuse constant stress with growth. They drown in 20 tasks, pull all-nighters, live on caffeine, and call it grinding. Their brain pays the price. Their decision quality goes down even as their hours go up. They become brittle, not sharp. If you feel constantly wired, sleep badly, and cannot relax even when nothing is happening, you are not in the optimal band. You are degrading your cognitive edge. Real conditioning feels like cycles: intense focus, then deep off mode. If there is no off, you are not training, you are being consumed. The dark advantage of mastering controlled tension is in how you behave in chaos. When a meeting turns hostile, most people either attack too quickly or shut down. You watch, you stay within your band. You notice who is emotionally flooding, who is posturing, who is quiet. When money is on the line and people are scared, most shrink their thinking to immediate survival. You keep some of your attention on long-term impact. When someone tries to pressure you with a fake deadline or emotional drama, your body still reacts, but your trained mind recognizes the pattern. This is a deliberate stress spike. Instead of agreeing just to end the discomfort, you use the discomfort as a signal to slow down. Over time, this conditioning changes how others sense you. You become the person who does not flinch at raised voices, who does not get pulled into urgency traps, who can walk into a tense room and stay steady. People might call it being cold or detached, but underneath, it is disciplined control of your stress band. It is cognitive edge conditioning doing its work. While others collapse or lash out, your intelligence does not leave the room. It expands. Predictive thinking and mental agility, simulating the future in real time. Your brain is not just reacting to the present, it is constantly guessing what comes next. Carl Friston and other researchers describe the brain as a prediction machine, always comparing what it expects with what actually happens, and adjusting. This predictive processing is not a special skill some people have. It is the default mode of the nervous system. The difference between average and apex thinking is how consciously you train and use that prediction engine. Most people let their brain predict based on shallow cues and old habits. Apex thinkers feed their brain better patterns and force it to simulate multiple futures, not just the most comfortable one. Predictive thinking starts with patterns. Humans leak patterns constantly. The way someone enters a room, how their voice changes when they lie, the topics they avoid, the timing of their messages, the faces they make for half a second before they correct themselves. Paul Ekman's work on micro-expressions showed that people flash their real emotion on their face for a split second before they control it. Anger, contempt, fear, and disgust all show up quickly if you know what to look for. Social cognition research on theory of mind shows that your brain is always modeling what others might be thinking, even if you are not aware of it. When you train yourself to study routines and emotional triggers, your predictions about people become almost unfair. The simple question, "What happens next?" is more powerful than it looks. Most people only ask it on a shallow level. They assume tomorrow will be like today, and that people will act how they say they will. Apex thinkers run simulations. They take a situation and generate different branches. If I say yes now, what will this person do in an hour, tomorrow, next week? If I say nothing, what might happen? If I push back, what reactions are most likely? This is not fantasy. It is mental modeling based on observed patterns. Research on mental simulation shows that people who rehearse scenarios in detail make better decisions, especially when they include obstacles instead of only imagining the best case. This is where mental contrasting comes in. You picture your desired outcome, but also the likely barriers, then plan through them. Mental agility is your ability to switch models and strategies fast when reality does not fit your first prediction. Executive function research, including Miyake's work, highlights shifting as a core skill. Task-switching studies show that people who practice moving between rules and perspectives become faster at adjusting when conditions change. In life, this means dropping an ego-protecting story the moment data shows it is wrong, and shifting strategy without emotional meltdown. Most people cling to their first move because changing feels like admitting they were wrong. Apex thinkers see changing as intelligence, not weakness. Training predictive thinking and mental agility does not require fancy tools. It requires practice and tension. One drill is switching sides in debates. Take a topic you care about and argue your position strongly. Then force yourself to argue the opposite with equal force. Your brain is pushed to understand the other side's motives and logic. You start to see how they will likely respond in real conflict. Another drill is dynamic rule change games. Play games where the rules shift midway, and you must adapt quickly. It could be strategy games, fast-paced sports, or custom exercises where someone changes constraints halfway through your plan. Each time the rules change, watch your emotional reaction. Do you freeze, complain, or adapt? Train yourself to move. Red teaming your own decisions is another powerful tool. Before making a significant move, pretend you are your enemy trying to destroy that plan. Ask what could fail, how someone could exploit your blind spot, and where your prediction might be wrong. This cuts through your own bias. It forces your brain to simulate hostile futures, not just friendly ones. Research on cognitive flexibility shows that people who can shift between multiple possible interpretations of an event are less likely to be blindsided. They do not rely on one story. They keep several ready. When you train predictive thinking, you stop being surprised as often. People become more readable, not because you are psychic, but because humans are repetitive. A coworker who always avoids responsibility will likely do so when pressure rises. A partner who uses silent treatment as punishment will likely repeat it when threatened. A manipulator who flatters you before asking a favor will repeat that pattern. By tracking these behaviors and asking, what is the next logical move for this type of person in this type of state, your predictions become sharper. You start to move early instead of late. The dark advantage is that you can steer situations by controlling what people think will happen next. When you know someone expects you to react with anger, you stay calm. That silence unsettles them. When they expect you to cave under time pressure, you delay. When they think you will chase, you withdraw. You are no longer locked into your own patterns. you are playing with theirs. Mental agility allows you to drop your usual script and choose a move that changes their prediction model. Each time you do this, you reclaim control over the interaction. At a higher level, predictive thinking applies to environments, not just individuals. Industries, markets, and social groups have rhythms. If you study how decisions spread, how trends rise and crash, how panic and greed cycle, your strategic moves in career, money, and alliances stop being random. You might not predict exact events, but you start to see ranges of possible futures and position yourself inside the most favorable ones. That is what skilled operators do. They are rarely truly shocked. Reality can still hurt them, but it rarely catches them completely blind. Over time, these drills do more than sharpen guesses. They change your identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone who just reacts, and more like a strategist running constant simulations. In conversations, a part of your mind is always asking, if I say this, what chain reaction does it start? In conflict, you think about second and third order effects, not just the pleasure of winning the moment. While others get lost in their current emotion, your trained mind is already in the near future, adjusting, pivoting, staying ahead. Strategic unpredictability and emotional weaponry. Humans survive by predicting each other. Your brain uses shortcuts, or heuristics, to guess what people will do based on patterns it knows. This is why routines feel safe, and why predictable people feel comfortable. But what feels safe to others is dangerous for you if you care about power. Predictable people are simple to control. If someone knows what will trigger you, what will flatter you, what will scare you, and what you always do under stress, they can move you with small pushes. Internalize this. Everything about you that is predictable is a handle for someone determined enough. Kahneman and Tversky showed how heavily people rely on mental shortcuts. They judge based on first impressions, recent events, and simple stories. This does not stop just because someone is smart. Even intelligent people use habits in how they react emotionally. If you always rush to fill silence, skilled negotiators will weaponize silence. If you always soften conflict to keep peace, manipulators will threaten tension to get what they want. If you cannot stand being disliked, they will use approval and withdrawal as a leash. B.F. Skinner's work on intermittent reinforcement explains why this is so powerful. Rewards given unpredictably create the strongest attachment. When someone gives you attention, praise, or affection on an irregular schedule, your brain becomes obsessed with earning the next hit. Strategic unpredictability flips that power. When you are consistent in your values but not fully predictable in your reactions, people cannot easily create a mental model of you. They hesitate. They think twice before crossing lines because they do not know what price they will pay. You do not respond the same way every time to the same pressure. Sometimes you engage, sometimes you delay, sometimes you ignore. The point is not to be chaotic. The point is to break simple cause and effect expectations others rely on to control you. When someone cannot be sure whether guilt will work on you, or anger, or flattery, their manipulation tools suddenly feel weaker. Emotional intelligence is often sold as a tool for empathy and kindness. Daniel Goleman's model includes self-awareness, self-regulation, social awareness, and relationship management. These skills are real and useful, but they are neutral. High emotional intelligence can be used to heal or to dominate. A person who can read your emotions, understand your motives, and manage their own expressions can twist interactions in their favor without you ever noticing. Studies have shown that people with high emotional intelligence can be more skilled at deceptive behavior when they choose to be. The dark use of emotional intelligence is not about screaming or obvious control. It is about subtle steering. To defend against that, and to use it yourself, you need to learn certain techniques. Reading micro-expressions helps you catch the second before someone lies, attacks, or shuts down. Active listening, when used sharply, is not just about making the other person feel heard. It is about collecting data. When you let someone talk without interrupting, they reveal their priorities, fears, and sensitive points. Every repeated phrase, every topic they circle back to, every sudden mood change is a map of their emotional terrain. Identifying emotional triggers is simple once you watch. Does this person get tense when they feel ignored? When status is threatened? When money is mentioned? When past mistakes are brought up? Each trigger is a lever you can choose to use or avoid. At the same time, you must hide your own triggers. This is opacity as armor. People cannot weaponize what they cannot clearly see. If you react visibly every time someone questions your competence, you have given them a perfect tool. If you show your hunger for approval, you have turned your need into their control mechanism. Training opacity means learning to sit with uncomfortable emotions without broadcasting them. Your face, voice, and body still react naturally, but you learn to smooth them out in high-stake moments. You speak slower when you want to speak faster. You keep your volume steady when you want to raise it. You do not rush to correct others' view of you. You let people underestimate you if it serves you. False tells are another level of strategic unpredictability. In games like poker, professionals sometimes build misleading patterns. For example, they may act slightly nervous when holding a strong hand, or very calm when holding a weak one. Over time, others read those signals and adjust, walking straight into traps. In normal life, this can look like pretending to care more or less than you actually do about certain topics, or acting slightly more bothered by a minor issue, so that people see that as your button, while your real vulnerabilities stay hidden. This is not about living a lie in every interaction. It is about remembering that in power games, total transparency is a luxury you cannot afford. Strategic unpredictability is also about timing. If you always respond immediately to messages, people learn they can demand your attention at any moment. If you sometimes delay, sometimes respond quickly, sometimes ignore trivial bait, they must treat your attention as something uncertain and valuable. In negotiations, if you always counteroffer right away, people will push you into fast territory where you make more mistakes. If you sometimes hold silence, let offers hang, or even end a conversation to think, you break their rhythm. Intermittent engagement forces others to stay alert. Combined with emotional weaponry, this makes you harder to box in. You can calm a heated room by speaking in a steady, low tone and validating people's feelings, then slide in a suggestion that serves your interest. You can escalate emotion on purpose if you know a rival makes worse decisions when angry. You can create a bond with someone by mirroring their core emotions, then guide their choices in directions they think are their own. This is not moral advice, it is description. Many already do this unconsciously. The difference is that apex thinkers do it with intent. The final step is to remember why this matters. Predictable, emotionally transparent people are easy to sway. You might feel honest and open, but to a predatory mind you are simply exposed. Strategic unpredictability and emotional weaponry do not mean you must become a villain. They mean you choose when, how, and with whom you lower your guard. You gain the option of playing different roles without losing yourself. While others leak their emotions and get pushed around by theirs and everyone else's triggers, you keep control. You become the question mark in the room that no one is sure they fully understand. That uncertainty is power. The 48-hour mastermind rule, slowing time to win the long game. Most bad decisions feel good in the moment. They feel clear, obvious, even necessary. The emotional pull is strong, the story in your head is loud, and your brain wants relief, not accuracy. That is why people sign contracts under pressure, send messages they regret, say yes when they should say no, and burn bridges they still need. They act as if the present moment is the only time that matters. But your brain does something interesting after events. During sleep and in the days that follow, it continues processing, organizing, and connecting information. Matthew Walker's research on sleep shows that complex problem-solving often improves after rest. Fresh insight appears not because new data arrived, but because your brain had time to restructure what you already knew. High arousal, decision fatigue, and ego involvement all push you toward fast, shallow thinking. Roy Baumeister's work on ego depletion and decision fatigue highlights that as you make more decisions, especially under stress, your self-control drops. You get more impulsive and more likely to default to the easiest choice. Emotional arousal adds another layer. Anger, fear, Infatuation and humiliation flood your system with chemicals that narrow your focus. The brain shifts back towards System 1, that fast emotional mode that feels right but often ignores long-term cost. This is why so many obvious decisions turn out to be traps when viewed later. The 48-hour Mastermind rule is a simple discipline built on this science and on how apex thinkers protect themselves from their own worst impulses. It is this: for any decision with high stakes, you do not finalize in the heat of the moment. You initiate, gather information, maybe signal interest, but you do not lock in. You let at least 1, and ideally 2, sleep cycles pass before you make an irreversible move. That 2-day window is where your brain moves from emotional reaction to strategic assessment. Memories consolidate during deep sleep. During REM sleep, the brain replays emotional experiences and softens their raw intensity. Over the next day, you re-simulate the situation in your mind, often from slightly different angles. By the second day, the same decision feels different. If it still looks right then, it is far more likely to survive reality. Applying this rule feels unnatural at first because it fights several instincts. Your ego wants to act quickly to feel powerful. Your anxiety wants to end uncertainty by deciding now. Other people often push deadlines to keep you from thinking too much. Urgency is a common control tactic. People say, "This offer is only good today," or "If you walk away now, it is over," to keep you locked inside emotional time. The 48-hour rule is you silently refusing to be rushed when the cost is high. You can still move fast in low-risk matters, but when the decision could alter your reputation, finances, legal status, or long-term relationships, you delay final commitment as a rule, not as a case-by-case feeling. Inside those 48 hours, you do not just sit and stew. You run a structured reflection ritual. First, you do a post-event download. You write or mentally replay what happened, what was said, what you felt, and what you think others felt. Getting it out of your head reduces fuzziness. Then you run alternate trajectory scenarios. If I say yes, what are the best, worst, and most likely outcomes over 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? If I say no, same question. You do not overcomplicate this. You just force your mind to move past the immediate reward or punishment and into time. Next, you bring in probabilistic thinking lightly. Philip Tetlock's work on super forecasters showed that people who make better predictions do not think in certainties. They think in percentages and update often. So instead of telling yourself, "This will definitely work," you might say, "Based on what I know now, there is maybe a 60% chance this goes well and a 40% chance it costs me more than it gives." As new information appears in those 48 hours, you update those numbers, even if only in your head. This small habit keeps your ego from falling in love with your first idea. You also pay attention to how your emotions shift. Strong anger or excitement usually cools with time. If a decision only feels right when the emotion is at maximum, that is a warning. If it still looks rational after the emotion drops, it is more likely aligned with your deeper interests instead of just your mood. You ask yourself directly, am I trying to prove something, punish someone, or escape discomfort? Those motives lead to short-term victories and long-term losses. The mastermind mindset is not about winning today. It is about winning over cycles. During these 2 days, you also stay quiet selectively. You do not announce every possible decision to everyone. The more you tell people, "I am definitely doing this," the more your ego locks in out of pure pride, even if you later see clear reasons to back out. Keeping your options private gives your mind freedom to change without social cost. When you finally decide, you appear not as someone who waffled for 2 days, but as someone who responded with calm, considered clarity. Combining the 48-hour rule with the earlier elements of cognitive edge, conditioning changes your entire style of thinking. Controlled cognitive tension lets you stay lucid enough in the moment to avoid making promises you cannot reverse. Predictive thinking helps you fill those 48 hours with useful simulations instead of random anxiety. Strategic unpredictability makes it harder for others to read or rush your internal process. Emotional weaponry helps you manage your own state, while others try to stir it up. Together, these habits form an identity shift. You start to see yourself not as a reactive mind, but as an apex thinker who designs responses instead of giving them away. In practice, this makes you harder to scam, harder to provoke, and harder to trap. When someone tries to bait you into an emotional outburst, you delay responding fully. When a deal seems too perfect, you pause for 2 sleeps before signing. When you feel the urge to send that long message in anger or desperation, you write it, then sit on it for 48 hours. By the time you revisit it, half of it will look pointless or self-damaging. You will cut it down or delete it. That alone can save friendships, careers, and reputations. The world rewards speed on the surface, but underneath, power belongs to those who think slow when everyone else thinks fast. The 48-hour mastermind rule is your way of bending time. While others lock themselves into the first move their emotions demanded, you give your brain room to transform raw reaction into strategy. Over months and years, that gap compounds into a massive advantage. You stop living as a slave to the current moment and start operating like a mind that sees beyond it. That is the real mark of an apex thinker. Your intelligence is no longer what you were born with. It is what you have trained it to become. What will you do with this information? Let me know in the comments.